Welcome to ShopTalk, presented by Show Chic, where they always put the rider in first place.
Thanks to Michelle and Crystal and Doug for hosting this great event, and everybody coming out to see and to meet them. Anyway, we'd like to talk a little bit, and I'm sure a lot of you have been here before, and we'll have a little bit of our judges talk, but I don't want to really go on and on about that. We have the training scale here, which we'll talk a little bit about, but that's not really the point of the whole thing. We want to focus a little bit more on the new tests, which you're all aware of, I'm sure, for 2019, starting December 1. We have the new tests, and talk some about a little bit of the changes of those, but more importantly about good test driving and how it relates to our training scale. And we have some video clips that we were involved in preparing with USDF with some trainer commentary, judges commentary. There's several different ways that they did these videos this year. So we'll have I'll show a few examples of those, and hopefully that'll maybe invoke a little discussion and questions or whatever. That's what these things are great. We want to hear from you guys too, and what you want to talk about, and so on, and what you see. So a few things that span the levels. For the USDF level, for the USDF levels, for training through fourth level is what we're going to focus on. So we're not a focus on the FEI levels tonight, but on the new tests through fourth level is our focus.
A lot of work went into these video clips, I guess you could call them. This is the first time that they've done this. In the past, whenever the tests have changed, they've videoed each of the tests and given the judges commentary, but they took it to another level this time. And we were really happy to be invited to be a part of that and do some of the voiceovers for the levels. I mean, there are some clips that are from the judge's point of view, and they, for the first time, did it from C and the side judge view at E, which was interesting. And then trainer tips, and we chose certain movements that each of us could then commentate on and how to improve on certain things. So a lot of work, and a large group of people worked on this, and it was very time-consuming, days and weeks involved. And are they released yet?
I don't think they're quite available yet, but the USDF will have them for sale. They'll be available through Vimeo. I don't know a whole lot about, honestly. So it's not going to be on the USDF, I guess. No, it won't be on. I'm sure a link through the USDF site can be found, but I don't think they're for sale quite yet.
But a lot of effort went into it, and I think they're really good.
So I want to start by saying congratulations to my wonderful partner here. From Germany, being promoted to FEI 4-star. A long journey.
A long journey, and they have a 4-star in here, so she understands.
Charlotte is there. Charlotte
You understand the stress.
So it is a long journey, a long road. And we can talk. I can show briefly, which I know we've talked about before, and Bill, if you want to talk a little bit also about the.
We've talked about it before you do it. Yeah, we've talked about it in our past many years that we've been here, but for those of you that don't know how many years it takes to do this, this is a very brief overview. And over the years, it's been modified. I think it wasn't too many years ago we figured out from start of the L education program to the end of the S requirements to then start the FEI was 15 to 17 years. That's been shortened now, but still, we counted in the car as we were driving our 5 minutes from the house, and it's now roughly
You could get here in 8 years.
8
and
years.
Then you have to be an S for 2 years.
If anything goes wrong, it'll be longer than 8 years. That's assuming that you have all of your requirements along the way, that there's a program available. When he did his large art, it took 5 years to get a program together, so that
so that 8 years grows into very quickly 15 and 20 years, because it takes a year or two before there's a program and enough people to have it. And
So
I'm in the
that's
midst-
if all goes well.
And I'm in the midst of that right now for the S program that is now starting. So I'm a large R, and we have an S program finally starting in February here in Wellington, which is really exciting that we're going to have that. So that's a year-long program of apprenticing with upper-level judges and going to shows all over the country to do your apprenticing, and then we have an exam here in Wellington next February. So another year or so.
Another year before he becomes
that.
S.
So that's the.
So anyway, that's if all goes well. The start of the FEI for the 3-star, I would say that probably takes the better part of 2 years for each category, if all goes well. And then there is no program for 5-star. That's a whole nother world. And I asked the question one time, when, how long does it take, what application and what program, and they said there isn't one, and it's when the powers that be that knight you is when you and FEI judges are being watched all the time, and there's a computer system, I don't really know much about it, but FEI judges, every score that we give for every ride is documented, and people can look and see what you're doing, and are you on the right track, or are you constantly off here and there. So all of that's being watched, and then when it comes time for countries choosing 5-star judges, all that becomes a factor. So anyway, enough about that.
Well, just very quickly though, I just have to promote the L program, the L education program. I'm sure there's some people in here that have attended parts of it, I hope. You can raise your hand if you have. It's done part of the L. And I really encourage people, if you're a serious dressage rider and student, to partake in it. You can audit it without having any intention of judging. It's just a super educational opportunity for any rider and student of dressage. And you don't have to, you can go through the parts, there's several phases of it, and you do not have to do the exam part if you don't choose to go on to the other judging program. But it really gives, it's the foundation of the education for our whole judging system in this country, and it's really one of the best ones in the world. It's really super. So
We really are the best education program.
Where do they hold that, Bill? Where do they hold the all?
it can be all over the country. If you look on the USDF site, you'll find links to it, and they'll have different sessions, East Coast, middle of the country, West Coast, and so on, at different times. I don't know exactly what the schedule is now. But there's always something. It's usually, there's some part of it going on almost all the time. Let's see. So, you want to say a little bit more about the training scale? And then
We've discussed this in some of our past talks here, and we don't really need to go into it again, but even though our tests change, really on a daily basis, how we ride our horses and how we ride ourselves really is based on the training scale. So even though our tests have changed, that's really irrelevant. We still have to adhere to the training scale every single day that we ride. In our past talks, we've also shown diagrams of ring figures, which I'm a stickler about. Every day that you ride a horse, if you're not following ring figures in the right way, then you're really not building all of these components of the training scale, because you're sort of making the horse in an awkward balance all the time. So we don't really want to get into all of that now, because our focus was going to be on the test, but
that's a whole other lecture.
Yeah, that's another lecture.
It's a whole other thing.
But regardless of the test, without that, we cannot present correct, nicely written, high-scoring tests. It's impossible. So.
Very good. All right. I guess we can go ahead and jump into talking about some of the changes in the test, and we'll go ahead and look at some of the books we have here also that I find in the moment. But while I'm finding that, if you want to talk, that was kind of the overview of the basic changes. I mean, the tests really, they're not that dramatically different.
No, nothing changed as far as the basic patterns. In training level, the only thing that changed was, instead of, in the past we had 3 loops serpentine at first level, it's now been put in training level. First level, we changed the leg yielding line. Instead of it starting from the corner at K to X and then back to the wall, we've separated.
That's a better line.
That's a better line.
Yeah.
I mean, as judges sitting, whether it's C or E, many times it's disaster to come through that corner and start the leg heel, especially if riders are green and really aren't able to balance the horse. It really just teaches bad training. So anyway, the leg yielding line now has been moved to the, what's that letter? Should I know the letters? P. Yeah. What are those letters? P to I with a 10-meter circle, and then
We'll look at that in more depth.
yeah, we're going to see it anyway, and then it breaks it up, and then you turn at C, and then it starts again on the other side. So it's been separated instead of so close together. It flows, to me it promotes correct training. And second level, instead of simple changes through walk, at second one, it's now been modified from canter to a few trot steps and then the walk. And the reason for that is that it was, in many cases, too hard for riders to do it that weren't yet prepared. Should be prepared, that's beside the point. But to be fair to the horses, we've tried to be a little bit more progressive about it. So at the beginning, second level tests, it's now canter, a few trot steps, and then walk to the new lead.
And then second two, the simple change serpentine that we've had in second one is now moved into second two.
Yeah.
And second three still has, I think, pretty much the same.
The same simple changes. So we're a little bit more progressive about it.
What if you do the correct simple change in second one? Doesn't matter?
Well,
No, because it calls for a trot, you're counter,
it's really
you
written
trot it, whatever it is, you're
yeah, so
canter,
I
trot,
think you really have
walk
to
at the
show,
corner and-
you have to show a clear
Yeah.
trot, or where you're not following the
Right.
directives.
It clearly calls for a trot between these
Oh,
two
yeah, it
letters,
calls
so
for it, yeah.
you have
Yeah.
to do that, yeah. So if you walk, I don't think you'd
Oh,
be
yeah.
missing the point of it.
Third level is pretty much unchanged, and then fourth level, test 3, which everybody has kind of moaned about for years.
It was the most difficult test, but it was so good for the horses.
Yes, with a good combination. It was a balanced horse and a rider. Correct, yeah. But anyway, we took out the rein back, forward rein back part. That was taken out. Instead of having 2 lines of changes, it's now at 4-2, 4 tempies, and then at 4-3, only 1 line of 3 tempies. The feeling was the test was too long. So to shorten it, they took some things out. I think 1 extension was taken out, as well as the rein back thing, so it did shorten it. So hopefully people will find it a little bit more, less stressful and less exhausting. So really, nothing in a major way changed, but I think some necessary changes.
Some positive things that I think make it better for the horses. They're positive changes to make more in line with good training and good riding, as we want to promote. So we'll start with we'll run through a few of these, and we'll start with training level. We have a nice training level tip on the stretching circle from Reese Koppler, who's sitting right there. And let's see if I can do it here. Look at this.
Again, muscle wants to stretch over the back into light connection. They have to maintain balance and also the quality and rhythm of trot. So this is a movement that we recommend you obviously practice quite a lot. But one of the things I tell my students is
Reset like
when you're in a
this.
20-meter circle, think of that as 4 quadrants. And those are divided by your circle points. And in the middle of each of those quadrants is a good time to reestablish connection, because we see riders that just throw the reins forward, and when you throw the reins forward, then the horse loses the connection. So it's really good to think about using the quadrants and pushing a little inside leg, outside rein to help with the stretching and maintaining the stretch. And that also helps to when you need to pick the horse's reins back up.
Good job, Reese.
Whoops. Wait a second.
No.
Right, that was not good. So stop. Sorry. We'll jump to, we already talked a little bit about the serpentines, but we'll go to the first level through with the leg yield, yours truly. Thing about the new. The new line for that, which I think is one of the more positive changes.
We're going to start with looking at one of the major differences in first three that we have this year, which is a change in the configuration of the leg yield.
So through the corner at K, of course, you maintain the correct bend and flexion of your corner, and that gives you several strides between K and D to start to straighten and prepare the new flexion. So at D, you can start the leg yield toward the center line at I, making sure you have flexion left, and then that sets it up for the 10-meter circle now at I. It comes nicely around the inner leg and well guarded from the outside aids. And then resuming on the center line and maintaining the flexion and preparation for the turn to the left. So that lends itself well towards setting up for that. And here we start to straighten after H and the new flexion. So at S, we start the leg yield to the left. So from the right leg to the left rein, sets it up nicely so that at L, we come right into the 10-meter circle, nicely bending around the inside leg and well guarded by the outside.
That to me promotes good riding.
And then tracking right at A, let's go through the pattern one more time, Jen. Really?
We won't make it.
We don't
too
need to see it a
again.
second time.
You got the point.
The other thing I want to say is in putting all these together, there were a lot of different varieties of horses used. So they're not all 10 movers or whatever, but a wide variety of horses to show these different clips.
And we can jump to an important element for second level, which about the rein back.
Introduced for
Our
second level.
training tip for this moment in time is going to be discussion and demonstration of correct rein back, which is very important to the training of a horse. It really is more than just
Maddie, you
an
didn't forget the rein
obedience
back.
test to get rein back, but also shows a willingness to take weight into the joints behind and to step back, but while always still maintaining an attitude of forward going. So Maddie, just come, you can stay on this half of the arena and once in a while make a halt and don't manipulate, just come to the halt and then just wait for him. Without a correct halt, the rein back becomes more difficult. A horse needs to stand at attention to the rider's aids and be willing to soften in the poll and the jaw without being manipulated. But even in the best rein back, the horse's will to go forward into the contact has to always be clear. And she makes a very well balanced halt, and you can see that the horse gives the neck to the rider into the contact. It doesn't stand against the bit. Even better. Now stand there for a minute. Then you decide when you're going to rein back, but it's important to know that the horse still has to be able to use its back. And if the rider sits heavy into the horse's back, it can't then easily lift the diagonal pairs and step back. So it's important to come into the halt and start the rein back from a lighter seat than you would normally have if you were then in sitting trot. Good, now trot on, and then go down the long side, and like you did in your test earlier, ride the halt and rein back from A. Maddie is a good thinking rider, and I know she'll set up the halt and rein back.
No pressure, no pressure.
Just to soften or give the flexion to the left side. Again, she comes well balanced from behind into the contact. And then a direct move off.
Very nice.
When the rein back goes well, then the hind legs are able to more directly push out.
Sitting as judges,
Little walk steps.
you often
And then another one
don't
here
see
in
enough
front of us.
correct rainbacks. You see hollow
And
running, and
see the crooked,
crooked,
left side.
not diagonal pairs.
So all
And
of
the
these
horse walks rowing from behind. And then stretch up to move out. Bring the horse back to the trot from your seat. One more at A. And I think it's also important to point out that the horse should be allowed to settle into the halt and not become anxious and rush back before the horse has had time to settle the weight into the joints. Another perfect halt. And I think that was a very nice demonstration of the correct halt and rein back.
Any questions on leg yields or rainbacks at this point?
We tried to choose parts that, well, there's many, but we tried to choose parts tonight, the pieces that we find the most problematic sitting as judges.
The turn,
Turn on the haunches.
still second, the turn on the haunches, because that's the other difficult one, that we see all kinds of variations, right?
What USDF
Right,
did with
sharp.
this was really good because they actually,
Working on a couple of elements here before.
Well, no, you'll see a problem here, and then
Working on
but lots of times it's not seen, but they,
line and preparation for the turn on the haunches. So Sylvia, think about him as you stretch up, and he has to take a little more weight behind, right? As you prepare that good? And then keep the rhythm be out. That's a little better, but be careful a little bit he doesn't rush out of it. Think about the line you want to come out of, and write it on the line like in your test, that you have the letters to focus on also, because the placement of the turns is really very important as well. So you can make your turn at H, and then go to the preparation. Yes, you want that forward, fluid, medium walk. And think as his nose gets to G, that at that point you're starting to stretch up and starting to shorten the stride with activity, and that he has inside jaw position. Yeah, and I get back over the hind leg, so the steps become smaller.
this was really
Yeah,
nice
I
how
like
they
how
did
it's-
this.
So watch, yeah, see the hind leg is going.
The outside hind leg has to stay engaged and step under the horse, and it doesn't really. And then lots of times riders get disappointed when they see our scores and go, well, I thought I did a nice turn on the haunches, but that was not.
So that's five-ish at best.
Step left, a little
And say,
outside.
yeah, it's like, whew.
One more time. Exactly. You might have to almost think, in the training right here, like what you did was a good correction. Yeah, good, good backs, left. That's more like it. There you go. That one I'll take, okay? That's good, good.
But I think it's good to see when things don't always go exactly as planned, and how we might make it better, and what we're seeing from sitting there and seeing. Whoops, I know where we put that.
Second.
So the turn on the haunch, just in terms of talking about turn on the haunches and walk pirouette, we've turn on the haunches at second and third level, where the turn is allowed to be up to 1 meter. The inside hind leg can inscribe the half circle of up to 1 meter. And then starting at fourth level and above, where we have where it's a pirouette, then we want it to be the inside hind leg to stay as close to on the spot as possible, but maintaining forward activity and forward motion.
But yes, at second and third level, it's medium walk to then shortening the stride. At fourth level, now we have collected walk. Without the collected walk, you can't do a proper pirouette. But at second and third level, we don't have collected walk.
So relating that then a little bit to canter, because obviously the preparation of the walk, what we do in the walk helps us prepare a lot for the canter, and then the pirouette canter, and Volker Broman helps us on this one, and this is a nice exercise. You can, it's 6 minutes long, I can skip
Okay, so
forward.
we'll
can
walk on
fast
the
forward it.
canter, and we'll walk towards that pirouette canter, and then in the fourth level test 2 where you have to do the turn, like a quarter pirouette. So which side is the easiest canter for him?
You can hear okay?
Left or right? Yeah, so we'll go. Okay, so you pick up the canter right lead when you're ready, and stay on a 20-meter circle. And first ride a normal collected canter, and then go to a little bit more forward canter, nearly working canter, and then back to the collected canter again. So that we get him to understand coming back and going forward very easily. Yes, and then, yes, exactly. Yeah, and then collect it again, 5, 6 jumps, then working again, 5, 6, 7 jumps, then collect it again. Exactly, so now he knows what's coming up. So now you stay in a collected canter, and when you're reaching the track, then ride a 10-meter circle in a collected canter, and at the end of the 10-meter circle, just bring him back a little bit more. When you're facing the wall, now collect a little bit more. And now out on a 20-meter circle in a normal collected canter. And do it again along at the wall over there, where you're approaching the wall now, 10-meter circle. And then when you're facing the wall, just a little bit higher degree of collection there, and now out again. Stay tall and a big circle. See, that's what we want to avoid, that hiccup in the canter, right?
Because this
So now you do it
movement,
without the
I don't know about you,
10-meter circle.
Charlotte,
Just
but I
collect
don't
them,
often see it
4 or
written
5
the way
jumps,
it's written.
and in that collection,
Instead
now
of
be
it
very
being written
front
like a
and
V
forward
to
in
turn,
the
it's
mark.
written like a big
That's it.
U.
Yeah, that's right. No,
Gently out.
It's not really a
Very
pirouette,
smooth but clear.
That's right.
but this is a
That's
good,
it.
when
And
she
then you
does
do
it, it's
that
a good
again. So then you
example.
get a little bit,
Skip ahead.
just get energy, and collect it again. Yes. And now you do that again. You go toward X, and I want you to just collect without turning. Collect, collect, and go straight out. And collect again. Collect, collect, and go straight out. Well done. And then forward and a flying change.
But I think
Really good.
the exercise that
See,
he's
did I
done
miss
is a
the
good
turn part?
preparation.
I might have skipped
You
too
might
far
have-
ahead, sorry.
think
I was
you-
trying to
Do
pick,
that.
oh, here, here's the
Energetic,
turn.
a little more on the
Sorry,
spot.
so it
Yeah,
comes
now
out.
when you go out
And then
again,
here's the turn.
There we go,
that's it.
yes.
Comes back.
That's how it's meant to
Well,
be
it could turn a
written.
little
So
bit.
let's
It could turn
lengthen the
a little
strides
bit
a
more,
little
but
bit
it wasn't a big open
Get
U like we
energy
often see.
and collect again.
Does she do it
yes.
the second time?
And now you do that again. You go toward X,
Maybe it's the second one.
and I want you to just collect without turning. Collect,
Oh, that
collect,
was when it
and go
goes into
straight
diagonal.
out.
Yeah, okay,
But that's,
but you get the
but that's a good
idea.
exercise
You
too,
get the idea.
sort of to collect on the diagonal without the turn. is
Once
good.
more with a 10-meter circle at the
So
wall.
I do it on the left. I think it's the same thing.
Yeah, but that was a good example of behind legs taking weight and then forehand turning. So we get the idea of that.
It's the most important thing, that he keeps the rhythm, that he sits and is forward thinking. Now do it once again with the turn, like it is in the 4th level test too. But take care that he stays forward thinking while he's sitting. Stay tall yourself. Okay, and gently out. Well done. And then one more diagonal like we did the last lead. You collect, 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 go out.
I'm trying to stop. Testing my computer skills here. And then the other, what they did leave in 4th level is the counter canter, the 10-meter half circles for the counter canter, which also ends up being interpreted in different ways when we sit at C and judge it.
They're half circles and not diagonal changes from
So let's
uncircled
start
to
with the
the
right
other,
lead canter,
which often is the case.
and just 20-meter circle
So he did-
right in the normal.
Can skip ahead a little bit. He does a whole
collected
developing exercise of taking the counter canter to like 15-meter turns and then kind of narrowing it from there.
canter. There we go, good.
But I liked his presentation because even though the horse is bent in the
So now
direction,
change across the
there's still a good
diagonal,
alignment, tail withers and
staying in
pole.
the right
It's not a
lead
broken
canter.
neck, and when she gets around to doing the half circle from true canter to counter canter, the horse's alignment stays
And then
in a nice
after
way, and it's
A,
balanced
onto
over
the
its 4
quarter
legs
line,
and not sort
in the
of
right
pulled
lead
to the
canter.
side. Like even here, as it's turning,
come
it's
out
still a little
here,
bit flexed in the
Go
direction,
from the
but
quarter
it's in
line
good alignment.
and make a left circle in the counter canter to S. So start turning toward S. Keep the flexion right and think almost like you want to push the horse with your left leg there, toward there. And stay on a 15-meter circle.
Not the hind legs displaced to one side.
Yeah, good. Give and take right. Keep yourself nice, yeah. Suckling on the right side of his mouth. There. And now the next time, see if we can make it now a tiny bit smaller than 15 meter, almost 12 meters. There. But so that you understand, you may not fall against your left leg while he's bending right. That's it. That's it. Okay. Good. And now we walk again. And we change direction. And now we do it like it is in a test. Right lead canter. 1, 2, 3. Now softly turn. Now think about
that was a good example of a change.
flexion right.
Because you really want to see them straight on the center line, not on a diagonal.
I'm glad they left it in there because even in St. George, we often see from the pirouette that the horse is not in good alignment. Its neck is broken and then the change at sea is affected by it. So I'm glad they left this movement in.
Hold on. And then they change forward. Good job.
A very old St.
The
George.
old St. George.
Yeah.
Really.
But I'm glad they didn't take it out. A lot of people said, oh, I don't like that, but it's a good exercise.
But now they put this in the developing for St. George.
Yes. But I used to be part of the old St. George.
Oh, yeah.
You were But to me, it's proof of correct training.
So that's a sample of what all the training tips, and it's on the side. There are a lot of others through the levels and so on. But those are that's one group of these videos that's going to be available with these little training tips and little short tips. And then the other, where is it? The commentary. Whoops. So we show the first level one, the commentary. So we have this commentary. No, that's Judge, so sorry. Sorry, it's this one. Here it is. So, yeah, this is the first thing is here. So this is a whole other group of videos called it's like a training commentary of a whole ride.
Before you enter the arena, know that you have your horse well in front of your activating aid.
So they do one of these for the highest test of each level. Is what's
Look up and stay focused on the field as you enter the arena to help maximize the straightness on the center line while keeping B and E in your peripheral vision as you approach X, so that you halt on X. To be better prepared for the left turn at C, ask your horse to Your engaging half halts through this corner are also preparing your horse for the upcoming lengthening. Think about developing power more than speed for longer steps rather than just faster steps. Returning to the track at F, use your seat and back to help balance the horse for the working trot and shoulder for right position for engagement and to be ready for the bending corner. The leg yield now starts at V instead of at K, giving you more time to prepare. Before V, ask for the left flexion and think 50% forward and 50% sideways so that the yielding aid does not diminish the trot. Your guarding aids on the right side help to regulate and balance the trot and to stay more parallel to the center line. Maintain the left flexion and the leg yield, not bend. The haunches should never leave. As you approach S, begin to ask for the right flexion and plan your path of travel for the leg yield with your eyes. Again, ensure you keep the energy in the trot and maintain an elastic connection to the bit as you ride from right leg to left rein. As you bend now onto the 10-meter circle, make sure each half of the circle is of uniform shape and size, and look ahead to A as you straighten. But you still have influence from the right circle to ask for the flexion, and then bend for the right turn at A. The balance and steady top line is key as you approach the 20-meter stretching circle at E. The size and shape of the circle is extremely important in achieving the best stretch. Know your 4 quarter points on the 20-meter circle, crossing the center line 2 meters inside the
beyond it. I'll talk about that. But this
Pay attention that you're on the correct posting diagonal, as this does make a difference in the engagement needed for the best stretch. The organization of the retake are very important to establishing the best connection by the time you rejoin the track at E, Prepare through your half halts for the transition to the median walk at H. The horse should be straight in the transition and allow the nose slightly to the front so as not to restrict the top line or the walk strides. Ride straight onto the diagonal from M before allowing the stretch into the free walk. Be clear in the difference of rein length, and again, keep eyes toward your target at V for straightness and attentiveness. Organize the shortening of the reins well into the median walk, and using your seat and back to keep the hind legs engaged in the transition will help prevent tension that can lead to loss of rhythm. The horse should be straight at K for the trot transition, followed by the bending corner, which ensures you have the correct flexion for the canter part at A. Through proper bending at the corner, you balance your horse on your seat and back in working canter and approach the center line so that the shoulders are onto the center line astride before X. Keep the left flexion, but do not overbend the neck. Keep your right guarding aids in position to maintain the alignment of the left canter and do not let the haunches swing. For the 15-meter circle, keep it centered from C so that it is not going in the corners. Envision cavaletti spread evenly over the circle, and you have to maintain the
You know,
balance.
this is a different order. The first level 3, the canter comes in a different order. It
Now
used to be
imagine
the circle, the length,
the long side and apart.
and then the loop. But now they do the loop first to help balance the horse a little better for the canter.
You now need to make a clear transition into the working canter at V instead of a gradual one. Coming onto the diagonal and left working canter, prepare through your half halts your balanced transition to the trot, and then change the flexion to the right for the canter apart. About 3 or 4 trot strides centered over X are ideal. You have 2 corners again to further balance the right canter for the loop, MXF. Remember, there is no change of flexion or bend, and the horse should never be going sideways.
We see lots of sideways watching this movement, right?
We see half passes over there.
For the 15-meter circle, center it well at A so as not to be in the corners, and staying 3 meters inside of L upon crossing the center line. With the engagement in the canter from the circle in the following corner, think of growing with the bigger strides done alongside. Again, straightness using shoulder 4 is paramount to keeping the canter from being on the forehand and to prevent the haunches from coming in. Again, remember to prepare for a clear transition at S with your half halt back to the working canter. Well-placed half halts before and after the corner will help to balance the horse for your clear transition aid to the trot at C. Utilize the corner to increase the engagement needed from your half halt to emphasize the transition to the lengthening once you straighten onto the diagonal at M. Sustain the steady top line and lighter forehand as you ask for longer steps with your seat and back. The corner at K and the turn at A all add to improving the balance and attentiveness to your half halts as you approach X for your final halt. Address the straightness and think of 2 hind legs coming under into your square halt. Make sure you practice that your horse stands still through the salute and as you take into the reins.
So how long is that test?
The whole thing is 5 minutes.
To write all of that out and practice it took a lot longer than 5 or 6
And
minutes.
that's actually not the test I did it for. Well, we did that as a commentary without the test. And then
To write the commentary.
that was in California. We were
And
never
then
in
we
California.
didn't do the voiceover of that one, USDF did that, but to write all of that out, recite it, and then I'd say, no, you need to say it this way, or whatever, and rewrite it.
There was just one more I wanted to show if you're okay time-wise. I can do the 4th level one. I think is
Yeah.
is that Volker, but the 4th level is kind of interesting. I think everybody with all the.
Do the 4th level one, then it's in.
This is Rachel Savadero.
Did they maintain the 3-second halt?
Yeah.
Is that what we decided? Oh, no, you know what? No, we decided we want to do the judges. Never mind.
We want to
Sorry.
do the judge.
Sorry. No, there's a 4th level. I'll show you the other thing. This is the.
Stop.
I'm sorry. Okay. No, what I wanted to do was the 4th level overview. Because there's a whole other section. Like I said, those are the trainer commentary ones, the one I just did for 1st level, but we also have the overview.
That's right, that's one, yeah.
Which is a whole nother segment of videos that they did. They really did so many different ways of doing this, and like that you could get out of it what you
Phil, where can you find this?
Vimeo. But I don't think they're released yet.
It's
They will be.
Okay.
Good question.
Oh.
But I'm sure through the USDF site, you'd be able to find how to do it.
Does,
The purpose of fourth level is to confirm that the horse has correct basics, has developed sufficient suppleness, impulsion, throughness to perform the fourth level tests, which have a medium degree of difficulty. The horse remains reliably on the bit, showing a clear uphill balance and lightness as a result of improved engagement and collection. The movements are performed with greater straightness, energy, and cadence than at third level. Again, the double bridle is optional. And in fourth level test 1, we introduce collected walk, very collected canter, walk pirouettes, multiple flying changes on the diagonal. We now enter a collected canter. We should be able to see the rider collect the horse a little bit in the very collected canter before the halt, and then the horse should trot directly out of the halt. The difficulty of this test is doing some of these movements on center line. K to X, half pass right. Make sure you have preparation. Don't start with the haunches leading K. Try to arrive just a little bit before X so you can straighten. Remember, the half pass is a 4-track movement, so that you can ride straight ahead to X and take away a little bit of your bend for your circle right 10 meters. That will prepare you for the 3-track movement, X to G. The difficulty here is keeping the hind legs on the center line, X to G, with the correct angle. You should be able to replace the shoulders at G in preparation for your turn to the right. Do not ride shoulder in through the turn. Now we come to our walk pirouettes. Again, they're put in the same location as our turns on the haunches in the previous levels, but now we have a higher degree of difficulty in that the size must be much smaller. The horse must walk and turn around the inside hind leg, and the frame of the collected walk must be more higher and collected. Your collected walk must show more activity, and if it does, the walk pirouettes won't be that difficult. Again, don't be afraid to use all the time you're given. Don't be afraid to go to M and to H. And at C, we have our circle left, 20 meters, 5 to 6 strides, a very collected canter between the quarter lines. We don't want to just see a slower canter. We need to physically see the horse lower the hind quarters. We need to see those muscles in the hind quarters and the tummy muscles working a little bit more. And we need to see those joints from the stifle to the hock to the fetlock close a little bit more. Fourth level test 2, we introduce a counter change of hand in trot and canter. A counter change of hand is 2 half passes. If there's 3 or more half passes, that is called a zigzag. And sometimes there's confusion as to what those 2 words mean. So counter change of hand, 2 half passes, zigzag, 3 half passes or more. We also introduce tempo changes every 4th stride, working partial pirouettes in canter. The half pass, the 2 trot half passes are together, one after the other. Again, from center line, take your time with the preparation. Don't push the haunches ahead. A good smooth changeover in preparation for your half pass right to G. Try to plan it so you have a few strides straight before you make your turn left. You're going to have to think about your bend is coming from the right. You have to straighten. You have to think a little shoulder for left before you change. So that's going to take some time. Don't just throw the horse to the left. Our working pirouettes are done on a bit of a V, and we want to see actually a few collected strides before the turning. We know that if you turn, it's going to help collect the horse, but the highest score will come from showing us that you can collect the horse first, then turn, and then go forward. The test that's changed the most is 4th level test 3. We introduce tempo changes every third stride, 10-meter half circle in counter-canter, and the working pirouettes in canter. This test will prove to the judge that you have collection. After we start our canter work, we do our half circles with the flying change, half circles with the flying change. Again, showing our collection. After the little squiggles, we do X, yes, right? X, the flying change. X to H is then a half pass, and then H is the flying change. Again, part of that same box. In XK is extended canter. K, the transition, and the flying change is one box. When we do an extended canter on the diagonal, the transition and the flying change should be right there before you go through the corner. The flying change should actually be the first leg that hits that rail. So make sure you give yourself time to show a transition and then ride a little bit forward for the change, but that change should still be on the diagonal line. The pirouettes come next from F toward X. We want a half working pirouette, approximately 3 meters in diameter, and the flying change at F, which again should be on the diagonal line, is part of the pirouette score.
Fourth level wrapped up in 7 minutes. It's so simple, right? Stop. Yes. Stop. There you go.
So now, questions. But that's, in a nutshell,
At least a sample of everything
sample
that
of our
we're
new tests.
doing that I think you can get a lot out of from
That's a very helpful.
all the different ones.
I think watching is helpful, not just those called, they're not DVDs, they're just clips, but anyway, I think watching is very helpful as a rider to see things live as well as on the computer screen. Anytime you get to watch, I think is helpful in training. Anybody have any questions? That can be test or training or whatever.
What's the thought process behind turning the shallow loops into a 3-loop serpentine in training level?
I would say the changes, the balance and changes of the bend is really the essence.
Because it seems a bit more complicated than just for like a more unexperienced rider to navigate through that potentially.
It is, but I think it's necessary, but then the rider has to be educated, and in a lot of cases, if they don't have access to help, then they do the best they can, but they're not really riding that line the way it's meant to be ridden, so they're really, I think, causing more struggling. They're not really gaining anything, they're not teaching the horse nor themselves in the right way, but sometimes it can't be helped. But I think it's a good exercise for a young horse to be able to do that. But as
for training level riders that are aspiring to doing the full serpentine, they have to know and learn where the 320 circles are in the ring. Yeah. And that goes on and on from, if you don't have it then.
Right. When we've done this before, we had charts and stuff up here, and we talked about, the ring figures. And anybody that knows me, Maddie, every time you ride a circle, every day of the week should be a circle, whether it's 20 meters, 10 meters, 8, whatever, it doesn't matter. If you ride a serpentine, it has to be ridden in the right way all the time. I mean, a dancer would not get away with, I don't feel like it today, and they just sort of, fly across the floor, not really paying attention to the basics. And if you're strict enough about it, you don't have to maybe think about it so much after a while, but the figures are important, and that starts at training level. That loop, it's a test of the balance and the adjustability in the horse's bend. Because every level, every movement beyond a certain point has bend. You said, which is true, Legial doesn't have bend, and that's another thing that people don't realize. Legial doesn't have bend, it has a little flexion in the jaw, and not the neck pulled over, but all the lateral movements have bend. But if the ring figures have never been followed with the correct bend, you can't then bend a shoulder, and you can't bend a half pass. So anyway, hope that answers your question.
Would that same move across the length of the arena be a requirement now in the training level freestyle? To incorporate that in?
Good question.
I didn't know if they
Charlotte,
came
do you know
out.
the answer?
I have no idea.
Requirement in the training?
I would
Yes, would it be a
Training
requirement?
level freestyle.
Oh, it's,
Since it's a new
right.
movement for the
No, that's a really good question.
training.
I haven't seen that.
But to me, if you put it in the freestyle, you're talking about putting it across?
No, this is serpentine.
The certain, right.
It's the serpentine.
No training.
We don't even.
Yeah, there is.
There is
There is
one, yes.
yeah.
But you don't
You
have.
can,
Oh, you're
you
looking
can
at
ride,
the
you
image.
can ride anything that is in the training level
That
test.
makes sense,
Yes,
yeah.
you can ride anything that's in that test, you can't ride anything above the level.
Right, but I don't know if this
If
will
it's
now
required.
be required
That's what
to
she's
be in the
asking.
freestyle
Right.
choreography.
Yeah, I don't know if it were,
To play it safe, just put it in.
but
Well, but it'll be written on the sheet, on the new sheets. I mean, it will be written what's required, so it is, that information's available, we just don't know it.
at training level, you couldn't do, even if your horse were a more advanced horse, you can't do canter walk.
Right, right.
You can't do something like that, but the serpentine, I don't see why you couldn't, but it'll all be on the test sheets. Anybody else?
I'm looking it up right now.
No, well, we must have something.
I just really like, because I ride a lot of babies and I've done training 3 8 million times
Right.
on a lot of different horses. I just like that we don't have to canter through the corner across the diagonal anymore. Because that could be a little wee.
That was hard for
Yeah.
green horses. By the time they got to the
For
second
serpentine,
corner, they
it's
were
fine,
already
that's
a
easy.
little bit hurried.
With the
It is
canter.
required
It's
in the new freestyle.
training level says
There's
serpentine you work in front
Yeah.
with loops no smaller than 15 meters. Oh, so that's to go.
Yep, double coefficient too.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
So if you ride it really well, it's times 2.
So that's that.
Anybody else?
Well, I hope that gives everybody at least a little feel for the new tests and maybe some few insights into your test riding and the training on a daily basis, and you have a great season.
Because we love to give good marks.
I think Crystal has a
Trying to make my way that way.
a drawing, a little graphic, so keep your seats for a moment and then.
Yes, we have, yeah. You didn't make it right, I know it's back there.